Hey, Finley.
Hey everybody, I just wanted to spend a little time with you today talking about these fig pots or planters. Uh, I originally started building these planters just for my figs. I found a lady on YouTube who did an excellent job explaining her plans on how she makes planters just like these. Um, I wanted to show y'all that it doesn't take a big shop. It doesn't take fancy tools to be able to make these planters like this. Now, I used her plans and her technique to build the first few planters that I built. But once people started seeing these, people started wanting these. I've sold 8, or no, I think it's 10 so far, and I've just got another order for 8 more. So it became pretty apparent that I needed to come up with a pattern, a template. And so that's what I've done. And I wanted to show y'all today how exactly I go about building these the quickest way possible to be able to be efficient with that and make a little money as I go. So stick around. I'll give you all the details. I'll also leave the description or in the description the cuts for all of the pieces that we're going to put together. I hope you enjoy the video. All right, so here you see 2 top caps that I've already cut and glued and nailed, and I've got them in these ratchet straps. These are really neat tools. I wish I had 4 or 5 of them. I only have 2. They're about 30, I think they were 32 or $34 at Lowe's. Very handy when it comes to making these. I do recommend getting at least one of these to help you with your top caps. I'm going to show you exactly how I make those cuts now. What I'm using for my top caps is actually a 1x6 decking board. It has the rounded edges, which I tend to like. I am going to rip these as well, but I will tell you, I'm going to cut this board in 19.5-inch lengths, and then I'll rip them to 2.5 inches wide on the table saw. I'm going to cut the first couple just so you can see what I'm doing. I will say this, I always try to take like a little cut off of the end. I think my dad always told me that's burning an end, so that's what I'm going to do. Make sure it's square. All right, so just take a little end off, and now I'm going to measure to 19.5 inches, and I'll start cutting straight cuts to begin with. So again, I'm going to measure to 19.5 inches. Oh, not sure if you can see that or not, but oops, 19.5. Now, once I get this first one cut, I will in fact set a stop up on my miter saw so that I cut all 4 of these exactly the same. So using a speed square, oops, got off a little bit on that, hold it tight, there we go. So now I've got my 19.5 inches marked. Tuck these things away. Again, always try to make sure that you're squared up. I'm gonna have to adjust my tent as it is in my way. But what I'm doing here is I'm getting on my mark just to the right of my mark because I want to cut exactly 19.5, and then I'm gonna set my stop up. Something I learned the other day. I have to do this. All right, so let's try that again. So I'm on my mark. Got my stop set. So what the stop is going to do for us is make sure that we cut all of these exactly the same. And that's just going to make everything fit together better in just a minute. So here we go. First one. So there's number 1. And then what you'll see is using the stop, they should be identical, and they are. So I'm going to knock out the other 4, and then I'll show you how I'm going to rip these on the table saw. I know I need to cut each one of these boards at 2.5 inches wide. I am using my stop, and so I know that this is already set up because this is the last thing I was working on. But what I do is I use my measuring tape up against my stop, which is locked in place, and I can see that I'm at 2.5 on front and back. And so I know this is squared up. So this is what I like to do with these boards as far as ripping them. We're only doing 2.5 inches, so common sense tells you we're going to have to cut this twice. I am going to leave the rounded edge to the inside of the stop, and you'll kind of understand why in just a second. All right, so safety issues here, obviously, where safety glasses, which I am, and be careful of your fingers, y'all. Always use a push. This is just the one that came with the table saw. I've seen some elaborate ones. This is just the one that I have. What I'm going to do is I'm going to guide this through, and then as it gets far enough in, I'm going to wrap my hand around to the back side so that I can pull these through. Always being very safety conscious and know where your hands are as compared to where that saw is all the time. Again, we're going to make 2 cuts, so here we go. Now, if you can hear me, I'm going to turn the rounded edge to the inside of the stop. Whew, that's loud. Maybe safety, I need to be wearing earplugs too. But now we have 2 of our pieces to our top cap. I'm going to go ahead and knock the rest of these out. I'll probably fast forward through that, and then we'll talk about cutting the 45s so that we can put them together. Now we've got our 4 sides to our top cap. We need to cut angles in them in order to allow us to put them together. So I'm going to cut them at a 45-degree angle. I don't know if it'll work at something else, but I'm going to run this over until it clicks in the 45, which you can see that on your miter saw. Lock it in place. And the same thing here, I'm going to set my stop so that I know that I cut each one of these exactly the same. When we get at an angle, it changes where we put our stop at. I'm almost there. Right there. That should get me right on the corner. So I'm going to knock this one out, and then you're going to have to pay attention to something too. I'll show you when I do it. So here's the first 45. When you cut your first 45, I have the rounded edge to my square in the back. And then when I flip it over, obviously to keep your 45s lined up, you have to have the rounded edge to the stop. And there we go. So now we have a 45-degree angle on both edges, and I'll knock out the other, well, in this case, 2 caps worth, but I'll knock out all the 45s, and then I'll show you how I put them all together. I'm showing the top cap first because I typically like to build out several or as many top caps as I need in the beginning, because I don't like to screw them down for a couple of days just to make sure the glue is dried. One thing that I do try to do, and I don't know if this matters, but I try to find the bad side, if there is one, and put that facing up towards me, and that'll make sense a little more in just a minute. But using this handy dandy ratchet contraption that we have here, I can put these together, and this is just temporarily putting them together right now, and then I'm going to glue them and eventually nail them. So there we go. So once I get it kind of lined up, I make sure everything is going to fit as expected. I'll tighten this down a little bit, and then I'll get my glue out and I'll put glue on it. I'm using, what is it? The Tech Bond 3. Let's see. Yeah, here it is. Oh, I'm sorry. I said Tech Bond. Tight Bond. I'm using the Tight Bond 3. This is an outdoor waterproof glue. Now, I will say one thing. It is a little bit runny, so I tend to make a mess when I'm doing this, but this is how I put them together. So I'll put glue on either end. And like I said, you're going to make a mess. Just be ready for the mess. Nothing you can do about it. This stuff is kind of runny, but it is also very much waterproof. So that's what we need for an outdoor planter. So once I get the glue on, I'll line it all up again. And then I'll tighten my strap down. And we'll let this sit overnight before we take it apart and build another one. So what I like to do, I'm just making sure everything is lined up the way it needs to be, which I think it is now. And then you just start tightening these up. What I'll do is, as I'm kind of going, tightening it, I will check to make sure everything is squared up and flush with each other, which this one seems to be doing really well. Sometimes they don't tend to flush up very well. So this one's working very nicely. So I'll go ahead and tighten that up. And I will always kind of spread my glue out. It's going to make it easier when we sand these a little bit later, if that glue is not in a big old bubble. So, but yeah, so now what I'll do with this top cap is I will let that dry in the secured ratchet strap at least overnight, if not for 24 hours, before I take it off and start another one. That's going to ensure that our glue dries. And I will show you, once the glue gets a little dry on the top, I'll use my nail gun and I'll shoot in some nails at some angles to help hold these together. I don't want them separating once they get wet in the outdoors, but I don't want to get glue on my nail gun. So I'm going to wait until this glue dries a little bit and I'll show you how I do that. In the meantime, I'm going to put the second one together. I got both caps, top caps done now, and I kind of wanted to show you what I'm talking about with the nail gun. I like to shoot at an angle on both sides, one on each side, an angle towards the other. My hope is that by doing that, I'm just going to have even more support holding these top cap pieces together. And so these are 1-inch brads, so they're not going to go all the way through on this, but they should give us that extra support that we're looking for. And there we go. So now this one is not only glued, but it's also got nails in it. This is why I always say to put the bad side, if you will, up facing towards me, because now those nail holes I can put facing down when I put it on top of the planter. So now we've got 2 more top caps. These will be ready to screw on sometime tomorrow, but we've got 2 more top caps made. Let's get to cutting some legs. Before we get into making these legs, I do want to point out a couple of things. First off, you'll notice that I have an A leg and a B leg. So you'll hear me talk about this when we start cutting the pickets as well, but you will have an A side and a B side. They have to go opposite each other or this will not work. They are different lengths, and that will make sense as we put this together. But what you're seeing on these boards is what I'm going to put in the description. Y'all, angles are not fun. I'll explain all of the angles when we get there, but it took lots of trial and error to get this right. And I would love to say that I wrote all this down for you guys, but I did not. I wrote all of this information on these boards. Once I got the angles right, I wrote it down so that I would have that reminder. You can write it on a piece of paper. You can write it in your phone. You can do whatever you want. This just made sense to me to take an example of the A leg as well as the B legs and write the information on the legs themselves. That way I have that visual example. I'm a very visual person, so that helps me out. But I wanted to show you all that before we get into cutting these legs. I'm only going to make 1 set of these for the interest of time. I know this video is already going to be long, but I do want to detail this out so that y'all can make your own planter boxes if you desire. But for all of our legs, both A side and B side, obviously the length we want to be the same. So I'm going to cut out enough to make 1 planter at 23.5 inches long. I have already marked my line. I do have a stop over here as well. So I'm going to go ahead. I did burn an end also. So I'm going to go ahead and knock out all of these at 23 inches. Once we get them all cut, we'll rip them to the proper width on the table saw. All right, so there we have 4 at 23.5 inches. Now let's move to the table saw. For the A legs, I know that I need to have them 2.5 inches wide. I know I'm going to need 4 of them, but I'm only going to make 2 for the interest of time again. So my rail is still set at 2.5 inches from yesterday, but what I would do, and you'll see me when I adjust it in a minute, but just use your measuring tape, measure from the rail stop to the blade. It's 2.5 inches, and I'm going to go ahead and rip these. One thing I do look for, especially when I'm ripping the A legs, is if there's a knot and I can cut that out, I'm going to go ahead and cut that out. So here we go. All right, so there's 2 of the 4 A legs that I need right there. And I'll switch over to the B legs. All right, for the B legs, we're gonna look for 1 5/8 inches. So I'm gonna unlock my rail and I'm just gonna move it over to 1 5/8 inches. That's looking good on that side. And we're on it on the back side as well. So I'm gonna lock that down. I guess I probably should have mentioned that it's the next day. I kind of ran out of steam yesterday after being in the garden all day long and then trying to make these planters. But here we go. So 1 5/8 inches for the B side legs. Now, this is tight, so you definitely want to be careful. Use your push and watch your fingers. You're going to want to be very, very careful with this one. Now, you can see with the B legs, we are going to get 2 out of 1/4. So now this one is super, super tight. And again, be very careful with your fingers. All right, so there's my B side legs. Now let's cut some angles, the fun part. We're gonna do the B legs first. And so, not sure if y'all can read that. I know I'm gonna have it in the description. You've already seen it, but I'm gonna set this to a 5-degree tilt on my miter and then a 5 degrees to the left. So this is gonna be a B right and 5-degree tilt, 5 degrees to the left. So let me set my tilt. There's my 5 degrees. And then the right side is going to be 5 degrees to the left. Now my miter saw does not have an auto lock at the 5-degree mark, so make sure you lock it down. You'll also have to play with the your stop, because obviously you change the angle, so the stop is going to change. So I'm going to knock these out. And I like to bite off a little more than I can chew, if you will, on these. I just want to make sure that I do them all exactly the same. With that tilt, if you don't cut far enough in, the whole end will not have the proper mitered angle. So here we go. I've got that set. I've got my stop set, so I can do 2 of these because I'm going to need, well, I'm just going to do 2 for the sake of the video. So here we go. And then I'm going to write this down. That way I know, and I'm going to say B right. And then I always draw an arrow pointing up. You do you. All right, so I'm going to do one more. B right. And now for the left, we have to change our angle 5 degrees to the right. And the whole 5 degrees comes in just a few minutes when we start talking about the angle of our tapered planter. I will set all of those at 5 degrees. And so the top needs to be at a 5-degree angle to make it perfectly flat so that our top cap will fit on this. So again, you can kind of see you've got to change that stop a little bit when you change the angle, because you want to make sure you're biting off just enough to get a full bite. Need to come in just a hair more, and that should do it. Yep. Okay, so this is going to be the B left. So that's how we cut our our B right and left legs to make sure that our top cap is going to fit on them properly. So now we're going to do the A side legs. If you can tell, again, 5-degree tilt. This time the left leg is going to be a 5 degrees to the left. So I'm going to readjust this to 5 degrees left. So your A side is a little different, but 5-degree tilt, 5 degree to left for the A left side. I'll do one left and one right. Looks like I got my stop set in a good place. I can actually go a little longer. We'll clean up the legs lengths at the end too, but try to get them as close as I can to the same, so that I don't have near as much cleanup to do. All right, so here we go. So this is going to be an A left. And then I always write which leg it is so that I don't forget. I dropped everything. All right, so now the A right. Whew, you see how I can get this confused if I don't write it all down? So for the right, the A right, we're going to set our angle at 5 degrees to the right. I'll probably have to adjust this stop again. I think I went too far. Still a little too far. Goodness. I'll get it there in a second. All right, that's going to do it there. So that is our A right side. Again, these angles are not easy. That's why once I got it right, I wanted to make sure and write it all down on a template, and then I label all these. I also will usually put an N, but I've kind of gotten used to the fact that whatever side I'm writing on goes to the inside of the planter when we start to put it together. So that's how I cut my legs, both the A legs and the B legs, left and right. Those angles are different and very important. Quick recap, we have now cut and built our top caps. We have cut our legs, both length and the proper angles. I got some legs over there painted. Now we're going to cut the actual cedar pickets. So again, I've got a template. I use these and I match them up to my board. I have a 1A, so I'm going to do the A sides first. So obviously I need 2 because I got 2 A sides, right? So I have a 1A, 2A, 3A, 4A for my templates. All I'm going to do is simply lay these up here. Now, I will say this, with the number ones, whether it be A or B, I tried to put the long end. You can see the tapers coming here to make our tapered planter. So I put the long end up against my backstop, and I match the corners up back here. And then what that does is allows me to go ahead and cut to length, but then I have to come back and I have to cut this angle on the raw end on the back side. So again, we talked about the 5-degree angle. That's what this angle right here is, 5 degrees. That's what I chose for the angle on my planter. So that's where the 5 degrees keeps coming in to play every time. Now for these, you're not going to set a stop because they're all different lengths. But here we go. I've got my edges set. I've butted up against. I'll get that out of the way. I'm flush to my backstop. So there's my first cut there. Now, to get the angle on the other side correct, I have to change to 5 degrees this way. Now I'll flush it up on this side, and that way I get just the right length on the other side. Got my angle right. Again, I did take away the tilt, so that is no longer there. So this is going to be so there's our angle on both sides. So we now have a 1A, and I will always write that on there. Just helps me keep things straight. Now what you'll notice is now I'm to the 2A template. Match up your angles on your board here. Notice this time I don't have to move the angle of the miter saw because we just set that for the opposite side. But every other time you're going to have to move that angle. So I've got it flush on the left. Write down 2A. And then I move on to 3A. Again, match up your angle. But now you'll notice I have to change this to match. So go back to 5 degrees. Y'all can see how having a template, you can knock these out pretty quickly. There's my 3A. Y'all, I write on these everything so that I do not forget. Now we're going to go 4A. Again, match my angle. And you'll notice, again, I have to change the 5 degrees. Now, you could probably do this a different way and not have to change it every time. This makes sense to me. It takes me 2 seconds to adjust that angle, so I'm not too worried about it. So there is one of our A sides. I'm going to go ahead and knock out the other side, the other A side now, and then I'll show you how to do the B. Maybe I'll skip the B because it's exactly the same as the A. You just need to know that they are different lengths. I will put the links to these in the description, but I'll show you how to measure from the top of the angle. So you will measure from where the angle goes down and tapers down. You'll measure from here to here, and that's how you set your template for your length of your A, B, I'm sorry, your 1, 2, 3, and 4 of your A and B sides. So I'll put all those links in the descriptions for you guys so that you can skip past all the trial and error that I had. As I'm getting ready to cut my B side pickets, one thing I did want to point out, while I burn an end on the flat side, hopefully you can see that, but I always put the what is that called? The top of the picket on the side that I wound up with a scrap. And I use these scraps, but just something to point out, you're not going to want that angle cut in your planter, obviously. So this is going to be the scrap end, whichever direction it is that you like to cut. I'm left-handed, so I tend to cut everything to length on my left side. All right, so making my last cut on the B side pickets, and then we can start putting these together. But you can see this is my scrap end with the dog ears. I couldn't think of what that was called a minute ago, and then it just came out. So with the dog ears, that's going to be your throwaway side, although I'll show you how we're going to use that. I will say I have put the miter saw away. There's one last thing we need the table saw for before we start assembling these, and that is to cut the angle on our top picket. Again, we've talked about this. Everything is at a 5-degree angle. So in order to get our top cap to sit flush on the top of our planters, we have to cut our top picket at a 5-degree angle. So you can see here I have both my 1Bs, both my 1As. Notice the Bs are longer than the As. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. Kind of alluded to it a couple times. But what I like to do is pick the side that I want to be visible. So for me, this side is what I want to be visible. So that is going to go down. Inside is going to go up. I have set my blade at a 5-degree tilt so that we get our degree of tilt here. I've also set my rail in order that I'm just going to take just the very top part of this picket off to set that 5-degree angle in order to allow our top cap to sit flush. And there we have it. This will be the inside. This will be the outside. So remember, the inside goes up when you make your cut. And that's going to set your angle up so that our top cap will sit flush once that picket is sitting something like this on the planter. I'm going to do that with the rest of these, and then we'll jump over to the flat board and we'll start assembling. So we've got the B side. I always like to put together the B side first. One thing I want to point out is what you're looking at here is what your customers or what you are going to be looking at when we put this together. This will be the outside of the planter. And then I've laid my legs out left, right, left, right. Now, I always write on these legs, and where the writing is goes to the inside. So I'm going to take this, the writing's here, and that's going to go that way as well as this way. And that's how I get all of my angles straight for the top cap. So once I've kind of laid it out there, I see that it fits. This board is a little warped. You just kind of have to deal with it. I put a little glue on here. Y'all don't skimp on the glue, and don't forget the glue like I kind of almost just did. I thought in the beginning that, oh, I'm putting screws in it, I don't need the glue. Well, guess what? I needed the glue. So I'm just going to use the nail gun to tack it on for now, and we'll screw these down a little bit in just a minute. Again, I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and tell you that my legs don't warp some. They do. You just have to kind of make do with what you got. And then what you're going to do is use the nail gun just to tack it in place. All right, so now we've got that tacked down, and I'll do the rest of these, and then we'll flip it over, and I'll show you how I put the screws in. Now we've got them all glued, tacked down with the nail gun. what I do is flip them over. The little nail holes are pretty easy to fill once we get ready to finish the paint. So what I'll do is flip them over. This is the inside now that I'm looking at. And I simply take a 1-inch screw and go down each one of these boards just to get that little bit of extra hold so that these things don't pull apart. So what I'll do is I'll go down each one of the pickets and I'll hit another screw on the inside of the board for more support. Now that I've got all of my pickets screwed, not just nailed and glued, but they are now screwed to the B legs, I'm going to flip it back over. This just makes sense to me. This is the outside. This is what I'm going to be looking at. So this is in fact my left side. And then I have my legs laid out left, right, left, right. Works in my head. So to put the A legs on, what I want to do is stand it up, but I always want to have the outside edge to me so that I can see the edge and know that I'm getting flush. So stand it up, but flip it around. Then I'm going to take my A leg, my writing goes to the inside, and then I'm going to flush it up. Now, right here is where you're really going to start noticing how these 5-degree angles all start coming together, because up here it's going to be flush and you're going to be able to tell why we cut those 5-degree angles. So at this point, I'm going to get it flush, and then I'm going to drill some pilot holes. I'd like to drill the pilot holes before I put my screws in. One, because I'm going to countersink them, but two, I don't want to split my legs. So holding everything flush, I have a countersink drill bit, and I'm just going to countersink the holes. I do on the top and the bottom. You'll notice that I go at a pretty steep angle. That's just because that's something I feel like helps hold the board together and helps hold all of this in place, and it won't pull apart. Pulled that up a little bit. Let me flush it back. There we go. And what I like to do is put one of these screws in about even with where the pickets are. Again, top and bottom, I have a tendency to go at an angle. You don't want to countersink these too terribly deep, because that's just more we have to feel with wood filler later on. So I do like to go ahead and stick my screws in the holes. Just saves me a little bit of, I feel like, saves me a little bit of time once I get the glue on here. This glue does not dry fast, but just kind of like to be prepared. And then what I'll do is I'll typically, you can see the little, where the pilot hole came through, so I know which side to put the glue on. And I'll just slather on some glue. Again, don't skimp on the glue. I tried. I paid dearly for it. Several of my planters, luckily those are ones that are just in my backyard and nobody else is looking at them but me. But the glue is in fact very important. So now I'll line it back up. Now, because I went in at an angle in the top and the bottom, I do not want to screw those down first. I want to screw these two middle ones in first, because if I screw the top or the bottom in first, because of that angle, it's going to try to slide the leg up or down one way or the other. So what you'll see usually is a little bit of glue coming out. That's all good. We'll wipe that down. This one's got a little bit of a bow to it, but I can correct that. All right, and so that's how we put the A side legs on. Now you're going to start to understand why the B and the A side are are different lengths because the A side is going to fit inside of here. So it's going to be a little bit shorter than the B side. So that is the reason for all of that and why all of this works together. I'm going to go ahead and put the rest of my A legs on, and I'll get back to you when it's time to put the neck sides together. Now we have our A and B side legs on. We are ready to assemble. So one thing I like to do, this is going to be my A side. So I like to view it the way I want to be able to see it. Now remember, I marked on this which was inside because we cut our taper right there, and so that one, the inside goes down, and then I just look to see, and everybody's taste is different. You're going to like one thing or another, but this is how I want to see it right here. So I'll stand both sides up. I will always put glue, lay this one down so you can kind of see. I'll always put glue here. Like I said, I'm not skimping on the glue ever again. And then what I'll do is just start putting it together. So this is the inside. So what I want to do is flip, lay that in there, flip, lay that in there. You can kind of see how we're going here. And I'm going to line all of this up once I stand this one up. You're probably not going to be able to see all this, but maybe I'll be able to move the camera in just a minute to where y'all can see it. And then once I push it together, I know that I've got it lined up. There's a lot going on this little bitty table, but again, you can see, don't have to have a fancy shop to be able to do this. So what I'm doing now is lining up the top so that it's all flush. We got that one flush. This one is just about flush. There we go. All right, once I've got that done, then I'm going to go back with the 1-inch screws again, and I'm going to screw in every one of the pickets to the side A leg to help solidify and hold it together. The glue's there, but those screws are really going to help hold this together. So you can see I got the first A side put on now. I'm just going to do the same thing with the second A side. Again, pay attention to your cut, and it is why, I'm not sure y'all can see that, but it's why I draw that arrow. That arrow points to the inside. So this is how I like it to line up. Y'all will probably notice that we've got 4 sides on a planter, right? And I will typically have 4 sides that look completely different because I don't know which one I'm personally going to like the best or anybody else is going to like the best. And that way it allows whomever to set it up so that they see whatever side they want, whatever side they like best. So, so that's what I'm doing. We're going to put the last A side in, and then we're almost done, y'all. Once we get past the template, all the assembly really doesn't take that long. Now we've got all 4 sides put on. So we're going to set it down. And this one looks pretty good. It is a little, it's a little uneven, but we're going to fix that with the legs. As far as the square goes, looks pretty square. I can see just a little bit off, but I'm going to pull that together when I put the top cap on. But there we go. We've got it all assembled. Now for the top cap, and then we'll be done. We'll put the top cap on now, and that will finish our assembly. One thing I didn't show, maybe you can see them. I put these little pieces in. Do you have to? Probably not, but I like to screw to them. I feel like it holds my top cap in place just a little bit better. But the important thing is that we try to line this up. This is going to pull everything in square. You will notice there is a little overhang if you use my pattern, which is how I like it. It gives it the look that I prefer. And once I get it to where I feel like I'm all square and in line, then I will drill my pre-holes. And with these, I'm going to go at a hard angle because I want to pull towards the other board here. So I want all of this pulling at each other, so maybe they won't pull apart. And so far, it's proven effective. Once I've got the first holes drilled, I will turn it over and put a little glue on everywhere. Again, just to try to hold everything in place. If I have any extra glue coming out, I'll just wipe it off. But there we go. Making a mess with that glue. It is drippy, runny. All right, so now I get it back in place. Get it all lined up like I feel like I want it. All right. So I am using, well, in this case, 2.5-inch trim screws. I typically was using, I think they were 1 5/8, and I bought the wrong ones, but the 2.5 inchers work pretty good. So that one tried to pull it off a little bit. Let me get it lined back up where I want it. Put a little more pressure on it. There we go. Once we get this first corner in, I'll go to the opposite corner, and that should firm it all up. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here onto this corner, and once I get everything lined up and get this corner set, that should lock it in. All right. All right, and we're locked in. So what I'll do now is I'll put in the other corners. Then I'll also put one on those little pieces that I told you about. And then we're done. I'm not going to bore y'all with the painting. These did get ordered with the cedar to be raw. I think they're going to want to stain them their specific color. But that is how we build one of my cedar planters. One thing I did want to show y'all, probably the reason why it wasn't level on the ground. For some reason, this leg I've got way too long is what it appears. So I'm going to cut this leg to match. I use one of these. I hate to say that I don't remember what it's called. It says pull saw on it, but I think it's for flushing things up. So I'll just cut this off to match right here. And then probably once I've done that, everything will be level. Don't know how I miscut that one, but I did. And it happens, and that's why I have this saw. So I'll cut that off, make it level. I'm not going to bore y'all with how I paint this and everything, but I will put a bottom in it as well. So I'll take this and I'll put it on the inside. And then we talked about the boards that I use. Let me grab one real fast. These are the tops that I told you about that I was saving for scrap. So what I'll do, I'll put this little piece right here in as a runner, and then I'll lay these, of course, from top down. I'll cut them to length, and I'll lay that, and that'll be my bottom. Now you can set your bottom at whatever depth you want. I'm typically setting them all the way close to the very bottom of the pot because I'm putting fig trees in them. I have had people ask me to set them a lot more shallow so they could put a potted plant in it. Actually, my wife's is that way on the back porch. We set it to where the bottom is only about right here so that we could put a potted plant inside of it, and it looks really good. So I will work on finishing this one up and get it painted. I hope that you all enjoyed this. I hope you learned something. Most importantly, I hope that you learn that you don't need a giant shop. You don't need all these fancy tools. I think these are very pretty planters. And I really enjoy making them. And now I've actually got people asking for them. So it's a DIY for sure. I don't think I could go into massive production on these things, but doing, 8 here, 5 there, I can handle that with what I have got in my driveway. But hope y'all got something out of this. If you did, like, subscribe. This is an example of the finished product. You can see the different design, and all of the pickets that you find can be different. And I do try to get 4 sides that look different. But this one has got the false bottom is set pretty shallow so that we can just put a potted plant in here. But that is how I make these planters. I really hope you enjoyed the video if you stuck around this long, because I know this was a long video, but I couldn't figure out a way to make it shorter and still detail everything that I've learned in the dozens of these that I've made so far, to the point where now I've got it down to a pattern and I can knock these out pretty quick. But if you like this content, please like and subscribe. Follow me along on my garden journey, my woodworking journey. Typically, all the woodworking projects that I do are garden related, but like and subscribe, follow along with me. Y'all, something I like to say with gardening, with life in general, but we should never stop learning, and we should never stop growing. Hey, everybody, thanks for watching. Hey, Finley. Finley's on the inside, wishing he was on the outside. I think there's a song about that.